Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. It's Tom. We're in the last week of the legislative session and very excited that we're about to wrap up and get finally our 21 budget. We, of course, had this session delayed by COVID. And really, frankly, we were very concerned about a couple of different things. We knew that the pandemic had caused a massive downfall in our state revenues, and we were looking at very severe cuts of up to 14%. And I'm really happy that it's looking more and more like the cuts we'll need to take are more in the line of 10 to 11%. Of course, nothing is finalized, but I'm optimistic that the final budget that we should see in a couple of days, is currently being ironed out right now between the House and Senate conference committees. And it has the benefit of, I believe, some better revenue projection numbers for the coming year. So I'm really hopeful that it's going to look much better than we had feared. I know that we will know certainly by the end of the week how many furlough days we need to take, if any at all. And I'm really excited about finally getting some hard numbers, because I know that for several weeks, I've been trying to say, this is what we're looking at, but we don't know anything until the budget is finalized. And so I'm glad we'll finally be able to give you some clear guidance on these issues. We're also excited because we really thought, with the delay in the legislative session and it being such a short session when they came back this month, that we wouldn't get a lot of our policy objectives advanced. But it looks like a number of the policy positions and laws or bills that we have supported and advocated for are moving along very nicely. And so I'm very hopeful that we'll actually make some good policy progress this year as well. Of course, today we're doing something we do every year, but we're doing it in a different way. Today is our virtual celebration of excellence. One of the highlights of our DFACS calendar every year is the celebration of excellence, in which, this year, for example, 250, but usually several hundred of our young folks who have been through the foster care system, who are in our independent living program, we celebrate their graduation from either GED or high school or college or sometimes advanced degrees. And so we weren't able to do that in person this year. We usually make it a big deal. We're having to do it virtually, but just the fact that it's virtual doesn't at all diminish our excitement for these young people who have overcome so much. And with the help of our independent living professionals, our educational professionals, our independent living staff, with mentors and foster parents and others, have really persevered and have achieved that graduation goal. So we're doing that virtually today, for those of you who are participating, thank you for all your work. And for those of you whose graduations we're celebrating today, congratulations to you. I know that your futures are very bright. You have overcome much. You'll have much more to overcome in life, as we all do. But your perseverance and your tenacity have prepared you for a wonderful and bright future. Of course, June is Reunification Month. Of course, generally in the past, we've been doing reunification celebrations from time to time. We are a little bit limited in that as well because of pandemic concerns this year. But one of the things I've seen in our reunification work is how birth parents, our staff, our service providers, and our foster parents all work together to take a family who is struggling, to whatever kind of dysfunction that family is experiencing that is endangering the safety of a child, to keep that child safe while we work with the family. And then we work as quickly as possible to reintegrate that child in his or her family. We know that in 99% of cases, children belong with their parents. Parents need their children. Children need their parents. They're just these very strong psychological bonds of attachment there. And so it's really wonderful in my book to see our staff and our providers and our foster parents and others, CASAs, all work together to mentor a family in need to the point where we can take a child who we've had to remove because of safety issues and then place that child back in the family and continue to work with the family so that we don't have to end up in that situation again. I know that there are some icebreaker programs going on. Those icebreakers are where we're getting birth families and foster families together and helping them get to know each other and helping them to understand that they really are working toward the same goal, which is the well-being and safety of a child or children who are in a family. So if you have an opportunity this month to engage in some icebreakers or to engage in some reunification celebration work, I encourage you to do so. I think with the Family First Prevention Services Act, you're going to see us using more and more of the federal dollars to keep children with their families while we work on these issues. The key, of course, is can we keep the child safe in the home? If we can't keep the child safe in the home, how quickly can we restore that child to a safe, stable family placement? Thanks everybody for all that reunification work, which is, quite frankly, one of the major things we do in this agency. Our OFI folks, I want to thank you again for doing wonderful work, keeping your SNAP and your TANF timeliness rates very high right now. We're, of course, doing the PEBT program, which should be injecting another $250 million or so in the next month into Georgia's economy to benefit those families whose children would have received free and reduced lunch at school, but for the fact that school was closed down due to the pandemic. And then final thing I want to talk to you today a little bit is about sort of the issues. Of course, we've had just a swell of, I think, of attention to racial relations in our country. And I think that one of the things that we've talked about lately, and we talked about it last week, was that Friday was I think what will become a much more major holiday in this country. It's called Juneteenth. And Juneteenth, of course, is many people didn't know about it before this, but I'm glad it's come to their attention. It was the day in June of 1865 when, although the Civil War had been over for several months, the federal troops finally got to Galveston, Texas, and were able to enforce the freedom that had been granted by the Emancipation Proclamation a couple of years before. And just as we celebrate Independence Day, our nation's independence, Juneteenth, I think, is going to become a real day noteworthy for a celebration of the ending of slavery and freedom in the United States. We've been talking a lot in the agency about how we can better understand the concerns, the fears, the anxiety, and the anger of individuals who are maybe Black or who have really, I think, reacted in an appropriately angry way to what has occurred in this country. I think the issues of police brutality we've seen lately have been just the tinder for a fire that I believe has really been smoldering for a long time. And I think that there are a lot of different ways we can address these issues. Of course, we have encouraged our staff to have real serious conversations, even if those conversations are awkward, about how we relate to each other across a race and across background. But one of the things I do, I guess I tend to be a bit of a geek, and I tend to look at history. George Santayana said that those who don't learn from history are doomed or condemned to repeat it. And so I think we need to learn from our history. At the same time, I think that for those in my generation and older, I'm not, especially those who are white folks, I don't know that we were really taught the real history of what our African American colleagues know and feel and has been passed down to them through their families. Kind of as an example, I found I got a lot of old books on my shelf that I inherited from my mother and grandmother and all. And here's a book called Georgia Land and People. It's copyrighted in 1900 written by Ms. Frances Mitchell from who I guess was at Athens, Georgia. I don't know if she's a professor or what. There's really nothing, of course, there's nothing in this book about the terror that slaves felt, the horrors of chattel slavery that we as a nation imposed upon individuals. There's nothing about the continuing, I think, effects of that slavery, past Reconstruction, the Ku Klux Klan, the Jim Crow laws. There's little or nothing about that. So I think that the way that we can better understand these issues and better address these issues, at least from my perspective, is to really go back and educate ourselves about what really has happened in this country, both before the Civil War and after. I've got a couple of books off my shelf, Booker T. Washington's autobiography, Frederick Douglass's autobiography. There are lots of other good books. And so if you're a reader, I would encourage you to pick up a book and, something more recent than this 1900 Lost Cause screed, and really educate yourselves and think, how is it that how do folks deal with the fact that in the very recent past, we had official doctrines in which people were enslaved, official laws in which people were purposefully discriminated against. And let's see what we can do to learn so that we can then go out and do better. Thanks, everybody. Hope y'all have a wonderful week, and we'll see you soon.